Alex says, I have little to no doubts that Bottega will do worse. Louise is an experienced designer. She finally has a big brand with a big budget to work with. Her work at Lacoste was superb. Yeah, let's kind of switch lanes quickly to Louise Trotter, because I know some of you won't be, as familiar with her work. So I made this video, as you guys can see on the screen, 4 years ago, which is titled, Who is Louise Trotter? The Woman Transforming Lacoste. That was when she was at Lacoste. For people that don't know, between 2007 and 2009, she was at Jigsaw. She was creative director at Joseph between 2009 and 2018. Between 2018 and 2023, she was creative director of Lacoste. And of course, more recently, between 2023 and 2024, she was the creative director of Carven. So I'm a big fan of Louise Trotter. I mean, you can see the video. I literally made that video almost 5 years ago now, talking about how I was really enjoying what she was doing at Lacoste. I think that she has a very classic style with the way she likes to design. It is very in line and in tune with the whole quiet luxury thing. I do think that she's actually a very great fit for Bottega. I do think that she's not as playful. She doesn't have that playfulness the way Matteo Blasi has. And so I'm not sure if she can keep that playful edge. But in terms of having classic collections, well made, well constructed, well tailored, I think she can definitely do that. And I'm very much looking forward to what she does at Bottega as just a fan of her work. But yeah, I don't think that Bottega is going to flop under Louise Trotter. I think she's going to do really, really well, to be honest. But also people saying who when Louise was announced, there are women designers, y'all just don't know them, although they definitely need a lot more. But I understand the, everyday consumer not knowing who Louise Trotter is, but Louise Trotter is famous in fashion. Like, what? She's been at big, big brands like Lacoste, Joseph, Jigsaw, Carven. Like, she has been in this industry for a very long time. So I'm surprised a lot of people don't know who Louise Trotter is. And that's also very telling because, people want more women to be in these roles. And I definitely think that more women should be. Literally, the customer base for a lot of these brands are women. But then people don't even know who these women are. And that works against these women getting these roles, right? Because a big reason why a lot of these designers are hired is they have to be big names in fashion. So if people don't know who they are, it's more difficult to hire these designers. Look at Louis Vuitton, for example. We saw names like Grace Wells Bonner, Martine Rose be thrown into the hat. But unfortunately, none of them are as famous as Pharrell Williams. So that's another thing. We need to bolster the names of these female designers. And, these are designers that I talk about. Like I've shown you guys, I made a video about Louise Trotter close to 5 years ago. So these are designers that I talk about all the time. But, I think we need to push the names of these designers a lot more collectively so that they get more opportunities in fashion. So yeah, let's switch lanes into the Louise Trotter conversation. But before we do, there was something you wanted to say about the whole conversation with women in fashion and, creative director roles.
Oh, yes. So I think it was an important point that you made that the women in fashion needs to be propped up more. But then there is something to be said about the personalities that we actually have as women's wear fashion designers. And I slightly think we're in a different era now, as opposed to when women couldn't be, themselves because of the fact that they're in a male dominated industry. But with that consideration, I see today that we don't have the type of personalities publicly, not to say they're not personalities behind the scenes, but publicly they aren't the personalities that we need in terms of like the allure that they have, their draw that they have, the popularity that they have. And that's not to say that they should be popular, but do they even want to be popular? Do they even care about all of these other things? Do they want that type of spotlight or scrutiny on them? Because with that level of spotlight that these women need or want or could get, it comes a lot more scrutiny to what they're creating. So I do find it interesting, like the idea of women designers being bigger and women actually playing the back, even though they are the lead of the industry sometimes.
I think also because when I think of what designer is on that level of she could be at any house, and the first name that comes to my mind is Phoebe Philo. But the thing about Phoebe Philo is that I don't think she's ever going to go to one of these major houses again, because she did that interview where she talked about, enjoying the work-life balance and being able to focus on her family and everything not being about, crazy scale that it is in luxury brands. So it seems like she's almost settled into her eponymous label and it works for her personally. So when you think of the personalities that are on that level and do have the following and do have the plaudits, it's very, a lot of them seem to just be very settled into what they're kind of doing.
Yeah, and that is the thing, right? So you need a very special mix of a personality of extroversion, amazing design acumen, and like the track record of selling, like creating stuff that people want to see, all in one individual. And then like some people just kind of grow out of that personality, right? So when I think about two particular personalities that are kind of opposite ends of the spectrum, but have equal value in my eyes, is like Galliano and Eddie, right? So Galliano is like very extroverted. He's going to give you his personality and he's going to be boisterous, right? He's going to be extravagant about it. Eddie just as like applauded, but at the same time, you know, looks a little bit more reserved just on a public stuff, right? Not even on whatever people hear in the background, because that's kind of fashion industry stuff. But he seems more introverted, but at the same time has that level of fanfare. When it comes to the women's side now, like been pumping Martine Rose up for like 6, 7, 8+ years, but the greatness, or should I say the accolades, still aren't given in that light that I guess we think that she should be given. And that's for many different reasons, but her skill level is there and her value is there to us, right? So, and then that's the other thing of, okay, do you sell and create things that people want to see every single season? And the answer is kind of like no, because she has skipped some, right? And then there's other names that we can name going forward, but is Louise Trotter one of those names for Bottega, or even not for Bottega, sorry, but for us as like the fashion public that we've wanted to see? Like has anyone really said, oh, I really want to see Louise Trotter at a big brand?
I just don't think the law was there with Louise Trotter in the first place. Like, obviously, like, Louise Trotter is a designer that I've been following for years. I showed guys a video I made close to 5 years ago. But I think, unfortunately, and that's why I made the point earlier, that we collectively also have to prop up the names of female designers, because a lot of people, they come into my streams and they say, oh my God, why do you never talk about female designers? Which I find hilarious, because it shows that I talk about female designers all the time. So if you think I don't, it's almost like you're not clicking on those specific videos. And then it comes into the question, why are you not clicking on those? Like, I talk about Louise Trotter all the time. I talk about Alawali. I've probably got one of the few, if not the only, video that analyzes Alawali's work. I have videos analyzing Simone Rocha's work multiple times. So that's the thing. I also think it's a thing where some people kind of go like blind to female designers, and I don't know why that happens. Even sometimes because I have women that comment on my videos and say you don't talk about female designers. So I think there needs to be a collective effort from all of us to also help prop up the names of these female designers.
Yeah, and that's wild that you still get that, to be fair, in terms of like talking about women designers, considering like even in the early iterations of your videos, it was like Antwerp 6, which obviously has Andy, and
My
then
favorite designer is Andy Mister.
and then Ray Kawakubo as well. I think it's like that. Yeah. So like they're all mixed within there. So it's kind of wild, even on the early iteration of your channel, that like you were just as much talking about the greatest women designers.
A whole dedicated video on Paria Farzaneh. How many people watching this chat even know who Paria Farzaneh is?
Yo,
like, I actually have a dedicated video on Paria Farzaneh.
That was a crazy pull. You've been watching the channel for years, bro. Oh my word, that was an amazing
Isabel Benanato. Like, unfortunately, I just think that people, like the general wider fashion public, don't seem to care, and I don't know why. I don't understand it.
Yeah, and it's kind of, I don't know whether it's interesting or kind of sad that, you know, these names are forsaken, and kind of, you know, maybe it's probably to the effect of people not sharing those videos from your channel, or I don't know, the men designers are more popular, but that's not really the case, is it? It's like, if you're in fashion, you're probably watching your videos, like especially when it was Fashion Archive, right? And then even more so now. So it's like these videos have been part of the ecosystem and ethos of what your channel has been. So, but to speak directly to the women designers, yeah, like we need to not necessarily talk more, because I think we do a good job of talking about them, but then when it starts to extrapolate outwards, it doesn't really permeate through the whole fashion like public in terms of, oh, we really love Louise Trotter and everything that she's done, and we followed her work for years now. Like even when I think she was at Lacoste or something like that. Yeah, so it's like I don't think everybody like her look
But
at
it's
Lacoste is
crazy
some
to
of
me
my
because
favorite.
when Louise Trotter was at, you know, Lacoste, I was like pushing her, like, this stuff is amazing. Like,
Bro,
forget the brand name Lacoste. The stuff that she's doing right now is amazing. And I was pushing it hard. And I still
yeah.
push her name now, but it's just, that's what I mean. Like, people online saying, who is Louise Trotter is like surprising to me.
And like it was, I remember it was them and like and then the Botter team as well. You know, like it was Louis Trotter and Bot, and I was just like, I remember that time where it was just crazy. It was like when they were at Nina Rishi and everything like that, Lisi and Rushemi.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the value to us is definitely different than the value to the wider scope of things, and I wonder what it is that people don't care about when it comes to these particular names, because I don't think that they need to be more outspoken. I think they can be designers that just do their work, but then how much do the people care about writing about them, right? So question is, how many
Mm-hmm.
write-ups have you seen or have we seen just in detail, just the same way as we see Michele and with Matthew? It's like, how many write-ups do we see about them? How many like live action interviews do we see where they can be in like a controlled environment talking about their work?
I also will put it out there, by the way, that also stuff needs to be done to help a lot of these designers. Like a lot of these designers, I have actually reached out to their PR and they just ignore me. But I also want to help tell the stories of a lot of these designers. So all you PR people out there, it's partially your fault too, because you do things that are not in the best interest of your designers and your clients. And that's why I hate fashion PR. But that's also another conversation to be had, because it's the way that a lot of these designers are marketed to. Like I literally reach out to, like, I don't even know if Louise Trotter knows who I am, but I've definitely reached out to her team. I'm not saying that she would have seen it, but her team, I've definitely reached out, especially when she was at Lacoste. Since then, I reached out to interview her and got ignored. So that's another thing. Even if it's not my platform, it could be other platforms trying to tell her story and it falling on deaf ears. And that kind of is what affects, how these designer stories are told, right? And it's really unfortunate. It really, really is unfortunate. But moving forward, though, something I want to know from your perspective, Dami, is now that Louise Trotter is at Bottega, the level of a brand like Bottega, do you think that she can become a name that is, big in fashion and that it has that law of like, oh my God, like the Louise Trotter Bottega era, people will start gunning for everything that she creates? Do you think that she will receive that level of praise?
So I would be taking a bet in saying any answer. So give me a moment to compose the way that I want to actually say this. Like, and I do need to do a slight piece of research on Louise's work. However, right, if it's opposed to what, because I do feel like if she's doing her at Bottega, it's not gonna look like what Matthew's been doing at all. And if it's
It's not
anything
going to
like it,
be as playful, for sure.
yeah, it's like there's just the work with leather. Like his work with leather is absolutely insane. Like there's no other way to describe it. He's been manipulating different types of fabrics and doing, and he has like a particular type of value, especially in terms of the Italian aesthetic as well, that kind of draws you in a particular way. So it's not going to look like that. And then it depends on which direction that she wants to go in. So if she's fully succumbing to the Italian way and value of things, just based on her acumen, I think she will do quite well at Bottega, fairly. And I'm gonna want to understand, like, especially considering how big this brand is, right? So you have to consider the economic climate that we're in, and it is more of a quiet luxury climate also, right? So it's like, does she fit that aesthetic like stipulation in terms of people want to dress less like what Daniel Lee's Bottega was and more like what
Mm.
Matthew's Bottega was, right? And now what we are gonna get in like this post-pandemic, even though like it's 2 years out, but at the same time it still kind of is that, right? Considering we're in a new economic climate with like the new president and everything like that. are we going to be hearing Trotter rhymed with something in a rap song? Or is this like, is that the direction that she wants to go in? Or like, is West Side Gun going to
My
have a
clothes
crazy
magic like Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Clothes like Louise Trotter.
Are we gonna get like some insane Trotter flip from West Side Gun or Lancey Foe? I don't know if that's the direction she wants to go in, right? And then like, or are we gonna get into a more value-based aesthetic, or the power of women within a society where it's becoming more conservative and they have less control over their autonomy in certain instances, in certain political climates, right? And that's kind of what, like, I want to hear the story that she's going to tell with the first collection, so that I can extrapolate from that to future collections, because there is a lot of things to work with in that, in terms of like, okay, is she valuing more the aesthetic side and the fanfare side and the popularity side, or is she pulling in more the storytelling side, or is she pulling in more the socio-political side, or is she going to draw all of them in and create this like maelstrom of design fury that probably transforms the way that we see fashion today? Because when you do all three, that's kind of what happens, right? And especially when it comes to like empowering women with clothes, like when you have a woman being able to do that with a particular brand, it's probably the best thing for them. But what do you think?
Yeah, I honestly think that because, and it kind of cringes me every time I say it, but quiet luxury, because quiet luxury is a trend, and I do think that kind of you can draw similarities to Phoebe Philo and Louise Trotter, right? I think they actually have a very similar aesthetic. And considering, people have been yearning for this kind of Phoebe Philo aesthetic, but Phoebe Philo's brand, I don't know if it's to do with the marketing machine behind it. There just isn't as good a marketing machine, which is why Bottega will do really, really well, and then Phoebe Philo's brand won't get even remotely as close to sales. That's because of, times that the brands have been around and stuff like that. So I think the marketing machine of Bottega behind Louise Trotter's aesthetic could really, really work for women that are looking for, very classic, wearable clothing that's designed by a woman for women. And then they also want something where things can fit seamlessly in your wardrobe. You buy this coat one season, you can pair it with the trousers that you wear next season, because everything kind of fits and works with each other. That's the vibe of Bottega. I think that's going to be under her. I think we're going to see less playfulness. Matteo Blasi had this playful side that I've never ever seen from Louise Trotter. I think Louise Trotter is just a very good designer, but I haven't seen crazy amounts of playfulness that we've seen from Blasi. So maybe she can do something different. Just because she's done a certain thing in her past doesn't mean moving forward she can't change that. But if I was to speculate, I think it would be less playful and more classic looking. And I would like to see how they market that, because in a realm of fashion where quality is going down, we have big issues with how quality of these luxury brands is deteriorating. It would be good to see them talk about, these are classic garments, but also well made. And I would love if a lot of these brands start marketing the way things are made. And Bottega is a brand that kind of can do that, because Bottega still, for now, is still about, the craft for now. So it would be good to see if like she can tap into that in many different ways.
I think that's an amazing point, honestly. Like the craft of it all. And some of my favorite videos about Bottega, the craft of it all. Like when they're talking about the Intrasiato, when they have that school in Italy where it was invented, and like, the leatherwork school that they have, everything about that like screams, great
Well,
fundamentals.
it looks like a cotton white vest, but it's actually made with leather. These look like jeans, but it's actually leather. Do you think Louise Trotter is going to continue that whole thing?
I think she might take elements of that, because like,
Right.
what woman doesn't really like jeans? Like, well, at least in terms of the way that Louise Trotter designs, right? And
Right.
then, because you may see a pantsuit, you may see like a long dress, you may see like, is she gonna make like to be fair, I think Ferragamo does this as well, so it's like she's not trying to copy anyone. But I want to know how much of Louise Trotter will envelop what Bottega is.
Right.
Like, I want to know what's the color palette. That's
Right.
kind of where my brain is. It's like, I want to actually see the volume of what she creates in this current cultural environment, and how she draws people into her world, and how much Bottega will actually put money behind that. Because it's not just about what she creates on the runway, It's what does the activations look like in Paris and Milan and everywhere else, right? That there's a Bottega store. Like when I go to Harrods, am I gonna feel what Louise Trotter actually is trying to express to us?
Yeah.
Is that the same thing that's going to happen with, you know, a new fragrance line, for instance? And, you know, just like with what I said with Blazy, just to keep it fair, it's like partially it's a bit because you're asking for something that may be over what you've already done. And then there's no track record of you leading a company this huge because I don't know how to say the name. Is it Carven, the French brand, or does it Cavin? Or something
I
like
mean,
that.
it might have I just call it Carven.
Okay, cool,
If people want to crucify me,
please, yeah, correct me.
Carven or whatever.
You know that, but yeah, like so yeah, you don't have a track record, and there are values that come with being at a brand this big, which is, yo, we want to see people buy the things that you make. So what is her Bottega shoe? What's her Bottega bag? Does she have Bottega earrings? Because like in reality, she could be like a Daniel Roseberry for Schiaparelli, right? And absolutely transform it into like this behemoth that we see today. Because for all intents and purposes, Daniel Roseberry took, you know, what looked like a small brand in Schiaparelli to, you know, one of the best things we see on not just runways, but on red carpets as well. Like, what is Louise Trotter's Bottega Veneta red carpet look? That was a mouthful. Why for that? But yeah, it's like
why for that?
but, damn. Yeah, I want to see that. I want to see what's her red carpet look.
Yeah. Also, Cobb, you've been making some strong points about Louise Trotter that I agree with. I think earlier you said that, or it could be someone else, but I think you said that Louise Trotter's knitwear is really good, which is true, because even I remember all those years ago when I made that video about Louise Trotter's Lacoste, the knitwear was especially what I was talking about. So I think she makes really good knitwear, so that would be good to see how she follows that through into Bottega, and then she could do the whole, you know, trompe-l'oeil sort of optical illusion of it looks like knitwear, but it's actually leather. I think she could do interesting things with that at Bottega. So yeah, that'll be really interesting to see because she does play with material sometimes. That's very true.
Yeah, and you know, here's the positives, right? She has great creative acumen, and sometimes what people need is more money and more resources to execute their grander vision. She's been doing a lot with a little for so long, and that level of ingenuity, that level of craftiness can, you know, rear its head in a major brand, and like it's not something that will envelop her, but she will envelop it with her vision. So yeah, there is that other side of like having to work with smaller brands and have a grand level of ingenuity at a small brand, so that when you now have your big break, you can absolutely transform what you see. So yeah.
Yep. Wait, do you think Kim Jones should stay at Dior, or who would you like to see at the position instead? I think he's doing well at Dior, like menswear wise. I think he's doing well. I don't see why he would leave, to be honest. And they're doing well financially also. In the long term, at least. Not in the short term, but in the long term.
And there's something to be said about just Bottega's standing, because it has been interesting seeing Bottega versus Loewe for so long. And now Louise Trotter's taken the mantle, and JW Anderson's an absolute beast. I wonder whether he's going to be competing with.
But no, I think Loewe is going to make way more money than Bottega.
No, I mean, like, just on the design wise. Like, Loewe is Loewe in my box.
I thought you meant wise. It's like
no,
make way more money than
like,
Bottega.
Sometimes, okay, this is my thing, right? I see it partially. I see the fashion industry partially as like wrestling. Like when I see certain designers, and I understand designers have egos, it's like, plus these guys are men. Their values in terms of, oh, who's creating the best collection this season, I think some of them try to do their absolute utmost to crush their competition in terms of fanfare per collection.
Probably.
Probably, but this is all in my head. This is speculation. I'm not spoken to anybody. But for me, Kim Jones seems like one of those guys that's like, I am the best menswear designer, bar none, at one of the biggest houses, and I do absolute numbers in terms of value and in terms of design as well. And that's the same thing with like when it comes to certain people like Matthew Blaze, who's such a great designer. I feel like he tried to turn up on everybody. He was like, this is my big break. I'm gonna like leave it all on the floor.
Yeah.
Like murder on the dance floor. You know what I'm saying? Type stuff. So I think he was doing like absolute crud at Bottega, and that's the same thing. So now when it comes to Bottega and Louise Trotter, is she gonna absolutely try to trounce all of these guys, being one of few women major house?
Wait, someone's asking, is Chanel price point way higher than Bottega? It depends. It depends because Bottega has some ready-to-wear pieces that are quite literally like, I remember there was a Bottega skirt that was 26,000. Now Chanel ready-to-wear isn't ever that expensive, like Bottega ready-to-wear, but Chanel does haute couture, so then it becomes like, what price point are we talking about? What line? I would say that on average, Bottega ready-to-wear is probably more expensive than Chanel, but overall, Chanel's way more expensive, especially haute couture. Like that stuff is not affordable. Like 150,000 for a dress. That's some crazy stuff. But ready to wear, I'd say I see more expensive pieces from Bottega than Chanel, ready to wear wise. This YouTube channel runs on your support. If you want to support the channel, you can subscribe to my Patreon. You'll gain access to exclusive content that includes everything from my Patreon podcast, where I give a behind the scenes insight into the fashion industry, as well as a fashion book club where I review my favorite fashion books. You can also check out my fashion ebook, which highlights the best fashion journalists to follow, definitions of common fashion terminology, and how to determine what a good source of fashion information is. The links to everything are in the description below.